Trying to treat a couple's infertility by only focusing on the female partner, it's a bit like trying to clap with one hand.
Oh, absolutely. It just doesn't work.
Right. Like you can swing your arm all you want, you can put all your effort into it, but you're only addressing half the equation, and frankly, you're not going to get the result you're looking for.
Well, and for decades, there was this systemic cultural bias that placed the burden of reproductive success squarely and unfairly on women. But the biology tells a completely different story.
It really does.
Yeah. We are finally moving past blame and into pure biology because the clinical data establishes beyond any doubt that male factor infertility is an equal determinant in a couple's ability to conceive. It is literally half the genetic puzzle.
Which is exactly why you are here with us today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the often overlooked, silent half of the fertility equation, which is male reproductive health.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get into this.
Same here. And what makes this exploration so compelling is how it bridges two completely different worlds. We're looking at a comprehensive clinical review titled Integrative Perspectives on Male Infertility and Sperm DNA Fragmentation.
That's a mouthful, I know.
It is. But the mission of this deep dive is to see how modern cutting-edge clinical science is validating ancient traditional Chinese medicine practices as powerful, measurable medical interventions.
Exactly. When we look closely at the data in this review, we see an integrative approach that addresses the root causes of reproductive failure, rather than just, slapping a Band-Aid on the symptoms.
But before we get into how we actually treat these issues, I think you, our listener, need to understand the sheer scale of the problem.
It's massive.
It really is. We're looking at a landscape where male infertility currently affects 7% of all men globally, and it is the sole or contributing cause in roughly 40 to 50% of all infertility cases worldwide.
Yeah, and there is one specific metric that really frames the severity of this issue. We have to talk about the 2017 Levine meta-analysis.
Right, I was just going to bring that up. This study looked at nearly 43,000 men in Western countries, and the findings showed that between 1973 and 2011, sperm concentration plummeted by more than 50%.
Half. In less than 40 years.
It's staggering, and the current data shows no signs of this plateauing or stopping. So, okay, let's unpack this for a second. 50% represents a massive systemic shift.
It really does.
Because usually when you hear about male fertility in pop culture, the narrative is entirely about individual lifestyle choices.
Oh, entirely. It's always stop wearing tight boxers, take the hot laptop off your lap.
Exactly. Eat less junk food.
But I have to push back on that being the whole story. A 50% drop across the entire Western world suggests something far more pervasive than just bad underwear choices.
You're completely right. There has to be a deeper systemic failure happening here, and there is. When you break down the etiology or the root causes, they generally fall into three main categories.
Okay, what are they? Well, you have pretesticular causes, which are hormonal issues originating in the brain, but those actually make up only 1 to 2% of cases.
Oh, wow. So very rare.
Very rare. Then you have post-testicular causes, which are physical blockages in the reproductive tract, but the vast majority of cases are testicular, meaning the factory itself is compromised.
The factory meaning the testes.
Yes. And what we are seeing is that modern industrialized life has created a perfect storm that directly targets that factory.
So it's not just the ambient heat from a laptop, it's the chemical environment we live in.
Precisely. We are constantly exposed to environmental toxicants, heavy metals, bisphenol A, and endocrine-disrupting chemicals like phthalates.
And phthalates are everywhere, right?
Everywhere. They are ubiquitous in plastics and commercial pesticides. And the biological mechanism here is what's truly alarming. Well, these chemicals often act as, estrogens. They literally mimic estrogen in the body. So the brain's hypothalamus senses this false estrogen, thinks there's plenty of sex hormones circulating, and therefore just stops sending the signals required to produce testosterone and manufacture sperm.
Wait, really? So our modern environment is essentially launching a silent chemical assault on the neuroendocrine system.
That is exactly what is happening.
And that's before we even factor in the modern diet and rising obesity rates, which, from what I understand, further disrupt those delicate hormonal signals.
Right, because excess fat tissue actively converts what little testosterone there is into even more estrogen.
Talk about a vicious cycle.
It is. This combination of chemical exposure and metabolic shift creates an environment that is uniquely hostile to sperm production. It triggers massive amounts of systemic oxidative stress.
Let's talk about that stress, because I want to look at how this environmental and physical stress actually manifests locally in the body. If we zoom in on the single most common identifiable physical cause of male infertility, we find a condition called a varicocele.
Yes, the varicocele.
Essentially, for those listening who might not know, this is a varicose vein, much like you might see on someone's leg, but it's located in the scrotum.
That's right. It is an abnormal dilation of the veins in the spermatic cord, specifically a network called the pampiniform plexus.
Okay, the pampiniform plexus.
Yeah. These veins are supposed to act as a drainage system, pulling blood away from the testicles. But when the tiny one-way valves inside those veins fail or are congenitally absent, the blood flows backward and pools.
And how common is this, really?
It is incredibly common. It appears in about 15% of the general population, but it is found in up to 80% of men dealing with secondary infertility.
80%. That is huge. And interestingly, the source material notes that 90% of the time, this happens on the left side.
Yes, and that is due to a very specific quirk in human vascular anatomy.
Right, I was reading this. The left internal spermatic vein has a much harder job than the right one.
Exactly. It has to travel vertically and insert into the left renal vein at a sheer 90-degree angle. It is essentially fighting gravity and hydrostatic pressure the entire way up.
While the right side gets a break.
Yeah, the right side has a much easier, gentler slope directly into the inferior vena cava. So because of that steep vertical climb on the left, the tiny valves inside that vein are under immense mechanical stress. When they break, the blood pools.
To put the physiological impact of this into perspective, I was thinking about it like a car's radiator system.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because a normal car engine needs to stay cool to function properly. And for the human body, the testicles literally hang outside the body because they need to be 2 to 4 degrees Celsius below core body temperature to successfully manufacture sperm.
That temperature drop is a strict biological requirement. It's not optional.
Exactly. But with a varicocele, the valves fail, warm core blood pools in the area, and suddenly the engine is overheating.
And that pooling blood brings a cascade of localized damage. The issue isn't just that there's a swollen vein. It is the highly toxic microenvironment it creates.
Right.
The venous congestion causes hypoxia, meaning there is a severe lack of oxygen in the tissue. When you combine that low oxygen with the elevated heat from the pooling blood, the body responds by generating an immense amount of reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Okay, let's break down ROS for a second, because we hear the term oxidative stress a lot, especially in wellness spaces.
We do.
But at a cellular level, these reactive oxygen species are essentially unstable molecules missing an electron.
Yes.
And so they aggressively tear through surrounding tissue, stealing electrons from healthy cells to stabilize themselves. So the overheating engine starts actively rusting all its internal parts.
That's a highly accurate way to look at it. This process is called lipid peroxidation, and sperm are incredibly vulnerable to this because their outer membranes are made of highly fluid polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Which ROS just easily tears apart.
Easily. Furthermore, sperm have virtually no cytoplasm. That is the fluid inside the cell where protective antioxidants are normally stored.
Oh, so they have no defense mechanism.
Basically none. So the oxidative stress physically destroys the sperm's lipid membranes and severely damages its mitochondria.
And the mitochondria is the battery pack. It's the powerhouse the sperm needs to actually generate the motility to swim.
Precisely. So the varicocele creates a hypoxic, oxidatively stressed environment that cripples the cell before it even leaves the body.
Now, if I go to a conventional doctor with a broken pooling vein, the standard approach is surgical, right? Cut the vein, tie it off, reroute the blood flow.
That is the standard Western protocol, yes.
But if we explore the evidence-based adjuncts from the paper, we find traditional Chinese medicine, specifically acupuncture and herbal medicine. And I have to ask the immediate skeptical question here.
Go for it.
How on earth do needles and herbs fix a structural vascular issue like a broken vein?
It really comes down to the fundamental difference in clinical philosophy. Conventional medicine sees a broken valve and addresses the structure surgically.
Right, physically removing the problem.
But traditional Chinese medicine looks at the same issue and asks, how do we modulate the neuroendocrine system and improve the microcirculation to heal the environment rather than just masking or removing the structure?
And the clinical data backing this up is incredibly rigorous.
Yeah.
I was looking at a landmark 2005 randomized controlled trial by Pei and colleagues. They didn't just count the sperm under a standard light microscope.
No, they went much deeper.
They used transmission electron microscopy to look at the cross-sections of the sperm of men who received acupuncture. and they found that the acupuncture literally resulted in fewer structural defects in the sperm's tail.
Specifically the axonome, which is the internal microscopic motor of the tail, and the mitochondrial sheath.
Right. And using an electron microscope is a huge deal here.
It was a total game changer. It allowed researchers to see the actual ultrastructure of the cell. The 9+2 microtubule arrangement inside the tail that creates that whipping motion, it was visibly healthier in the treatment group.
Which just begs the question of the physiological mechanism. I mean, how does a tiny needle placed in the skin change the microscopic ultrastructure of a single cell's tail deep inside the body?
It sounds abstract, I know.
It sounds like magic, honestly.
But it's not magic. It's grounded in nervous system manipulation. When you use electroacupuncture, you are directly modulating the sympathetic vascular tone.
Okay, meaning what?
Meaning you are signaling the autonomic nervous system to relax the blood vessels in that specific area. This helps drain the pooling blood and relieve the venous congestion.
Oh, wow. So you were physically opening the drain.
Yes. Furthermore, that specific needle stimulation triggers the central nervous system to release beta endorphins and neuropeptides. These chemical messengers communicate directly with the hypothalamus, which, as we discussed earlier, controls the hormonal cascade.
So it ultimately boosts downstream testosterone production.
Exactly. You are essentially using the nervous system as a biological remote control to optimize local blood flow, cool down the tissue, and restore the hormonal balance.
That is fascinating. And when you combine that neurological intervention with herbal medicine, the effects compound, right?
They do. Studies involving multi-herb formulas show they don't just act like a single targeted pharmaceutical drug masking a symptom. They actively boost the body's endogenous antioxidants.
Right. For instance, the paper mentions they significantly increase superoxide dismutase, or SOD.
Yes, SOD is a crucial enzyme. It acts as the body's primary fire extinguisher for reactive oxygen species.
Okay, I love that analogy, the fire extinguisher.
Right. And at the same time, these herbal formulas lower malondialdehyde, or MDA.
Which is what exactly?
It is the chemical byproduct of lipid peroxidation. So if ROS is the fire and SOD is the extinguisher, MDA is the ash left over from the cellular damage.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So by increasing SOD and lowering MDA, these herbs are actively repairing the cellular environment while simultaneously cooling it.
Exactly.
Which is incredible for the things we can measure externally. Like, we can look under a microscope and see that the sperm are swimming more robustly, their tails aren't degraded, the count is higher.
Right.
But there's an even more insidious problem detailed in the review. A threat we absolutely cannot see on a standard 2021 WHO semen analysis.
Yes, we need to talk about sperm DNA fragmentation, or SDF.
Right.
This is arguably the most critical and devastating insight in modern fertility medicine. We are talking about physical structural breaks, like single or double strand breaks, in the actual nuclear DNA of the spermatozoa.
Meaning a sperm cell might look perfectly normal under a standard light microscope.
Completely normal. It has a good oval shape, it's swimming vigorously, but its genetic payload inside the head could be completely shattered.
To understand how that happens, we really have to look at the biology of sperm maturation, specifically a process called protamination. Because normally, human DNA wraps around bulky proteins called histones, right? Like thread wrapped around a wooden spool.
Right, but to fit half of a human genome into the microscopic hydrodynamic head of a sperm cell, the body has to aggressively compact it. It strips away those bulky histone spools and replaces them with smaller proteins called protamines.
It is just a remarkable biological feat.
It really is. Protamines act like tightly coiled chemical zip ties, compacting the DNA by a factor of 10. This dense packaging is designed to protect the genetic code during its long journey through the female reproductive tract.
It's literal biological data compression. It's like taking a massive video file on your computer and creating a highly compressed zip file so it can be sent in an email.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But here's the vulnerability. During that swap from histones to protamines, the DNA strands are temporarily naked and highly exposed.
And that is the danger zone. If the varicocele or the environmental toxins are generating massive amounts of reactive oxygen species, those free radicals attack the exposed DNA backbone. They corrupt the file during the compression phase.
Which is DNA fragmentation.
Exactly. And because of that compression, the flash drive, the sperm, still looks completely normal on the outside. But when it fertilizes an egg, the impact is profound.
Right, because when you plug that corrupted flash drive in, the computer or the resulting embryo might start booting up. But eventually, because the foundational genetic code is broken, it's going to crash.
Yes, which in human terms means a failed conception, an arrested embryo, or a miscarriage.
And the clinical reality of this is staggering. The assays used to measure this invisible damage, like the sperm chromatin structure assay, report a DNA fragmentation index, or a DFI.
Yes, DFI.
And the critical threshold widely accepted in the literature is roughly 25 to 30%.
Right. And if a man's DFI climbs above 27%, the success rate of intrauterine insemination, or IUI, drops from a respectable 14.9% down to a dismal 1.5%.
Wow, a nearly tenfold drop in success just from broken, invisible DNA strands.
Yes. And it is a major recognized driver of failed IVF and ICSI cycles, as well as unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss.
Unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss. That is heartbreaking.
It is. And this happens because the oocyte, the female egg, does have a natural capacity to repair damaged DNA that the sperm brings in.
Oh, it does?
It does. However, that repair mechanism has limits. And tragically, that capacity naturally diminishes with maternal age.
I see.
So a clinic might culture a perfectly normal-looking IVF embryo at day 3, but because it is derived from highly fragmented sperm, the unrepaired DNA damage causes it to arrest and fail by day 5.
That completely shifts the narrative of unexplained infertility. But the paper also offers a clear path forward, which is the hopeful part of this deep dive.
Absolutely.
If the invisible problem is oxidative stress, physically breaking apart the DNA strands during pertamination, the polyvalent antioxidant power of traditional Chinese medicine serves as a highly viable way to repair this genome before conception even happens.
And the clinical data on this intervention is incredibly encouraging. A 2014 prospective study by Bidoui and colleagues demonstrated that just 8 weeks of acupuncture lowered the DNA fragmentation index from 32.4%.
Which is firmly in the high-risk category.
Exactly. It lowered it down to 24.7%. That shift literally moves men out of the clinical danger zone and into a moderate risk category where natural conception and assisted reproductive technology success are vastly more likely.
And the herbal medicine results mirror that success, too.
Yeah.
A 2010 randomized controlled trial by Good and colleagues showed a 10.3 percentage point drop in DFI using herbal medicine over 3 months.
Right.
And then another study, in 2016, demonstrated a 41% reduction in seminal ROS and a 38% increase in that protective SOD enzyme we talked about earlier.
Leading directly to natural conceptions in the trial group?
Which is amazing. So I want to ask a highly practical question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this and you're heading into an IVF clinic next week for a retrieval, what is the actual practical application of this timeline? Is it too late?
Well, it comes down to the strict biological clock of spermatogenesis. Creating a mature sperm cell takes roughly 74 days.
74 days?
Yes. It is an intricate, highly orchestrated assembly line. You start with a stem cell, a spermatogonium. It has to undergo meiosis to have its chromosomes.
Right.
Then it morphs from a round cell into a streamlined cell with a tail during spermiogenesis. And finally, it has to physically mature as it travels through the epididymis.
So if you are going in for IVF next week, interventions today will not change the structural integrity of the sperm you collect then.
Unfortunately, no. The die is already cast for that specific batch of cells.
Right.
Exactly. The clinical consensus stresses a long-term integrated approach. Men need a minimum of 3 to 6 months of combined acupuncture and herbal treatment prior to sperm collection.
Just to cover that entire 74-day manufacturing cycle?
Often multiple times. You have to cover it to effectively heal the oxidative environment, repair the vascular microcirculation, and ensure the DNA is protected during that vulnerable pertamination phase. You have to shift the DFI out of the high-risk category before fertilization occurs.
74 days.
Yeah.
It really reinforces that reproductive health is a physiological marathon, not a sprint. You simply cannot plant a seed in oxidatively toxic soil and expect a harvest tomorrow.
Well said.
Let's do a quick recap of the journey we've been on today.
Yeah.
We started with the sheer scale of the crisis, right? A 50% global decline in sperm concentration, driven by endocrine-disrupting chemicals and metabolic stress.
Yes.
We unpacked the mechanical overheating mechanisms of Varicoceles and how that hydrostatic pressure creates a hypoxic environment that basically rusts the cellular machinery.
The rusted engine.
Exactly. Then we uncovered the hidden threat of sperm DNA fragmentation, where morphologically normal cells carry corrupted genetic data due to oxidative strikes during DNA compaction.
And finally, we explored how the measurable neuroendocrine mechanisms of acupuncture and complex herbal formulas are validated by modern clinical metrics to cool that environment and protect the genome. And the overarching takeaway here is that true reproductive health demands evaluating the entire biological picture.
Yeah.
Being comprehensively informed about the cellular health of both partners isn't just about equity in the process.
Right.
It is the ultimate scientifically backed shortcut to better clinical outcomes. We simply cannot ignore half the biological equation and expect consistent success.
Clapping with two hands.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. We know that environmental toxins, plastics, and oxidative stressors are continuously rising globally.
Yeah.
And we now understand the precise mechanisms of how a father's oxidatively stressed sperm can carry fragmented DNA that directly disrupts early embryonic development.
It's a heavy reality.
So what does this mean for the long-term genetic legacy we're passing down? Are we merely fighting an isolated fertility battle for families trying to conceive today? Or are we fundamentally altering the integrity of the human blueprint for generations to come? Think about that, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.